Welcome back! My name is Luyren, and this is my Stencyl Resource Pack tutorial series. Part 3-2 Cutscene Pack Dialog Interface. This is an in-depth look at the dialog interface behavior for the Cutscene Resource Pack, covering how to customize your dialog layout, the special commands you can use for the dialog text, and some example cutscene scripts featuring dialogues. These behaviors draws text one character at a time. You can set a line length and a maximum number of lines to display. Lines are broken automatically, and you have the option to call for a new dialog window when it reaches the line limit, requiring an input to advance the dialog. Or to draw everything in a single window, pushing out previous lines of text. You can accelerate the dialog with a key input or set it to draw everything instantly. You also customize indicators when the dialog is done, portrait, background window, and there are several special commands you can include in the text itself, for effects such as tremble and change font. Let's go over the attributes and see how everything is customized. Use controls determines if the player can use key inputs to advance dialog windows or speed up dialog drawing. If you set it to false, you can still advance the dialog window by using the trigger Next Part. Proceed dialog is a control the player can press to advance to the next dialog window or to dismiss the dialog completely. Accelerate dialog is a control that, when held, makes the dialog draw faster. Draw mode determines if the dialog is drawn from the actor's position or on-screen coordinates. In actor mode, the dialog image considers x0 the actor's x-center and y0 the actor's y position. On screen mode, x0 and y0 is the top left corner of the screen. Dialog canvas size is the area you have available to show the dialog elements. Think of it as a literal canvas, where you place each element of the dialog, such as the background, dialog text, and character portrait. You configure it with the width and height separated by a space. If you set one of them to screen, the canvas will use the screen's dimensions for that. If you are using actor draw mode, it is recommended you give the canvas a smaller size, especially if you want to centralize the dialog on the actor's position. Dialog position is the position of the entire dialog canvas, either on screen or from the actor's position, based on the draw mode selected. You set in this order the X origin, left or right, the X position, the Y origin, top or bottom, and the Y position, all separated by spaces. When using actor draw mode, always use origins left and top. You can set the X position to center, which will centralize the canvas position on the actor or on the screen. By customizing the origin, you can have your dialog's position consistently at the bottom or right sides of the screen, useful when working on mobile games, where you have to take into account multiple resolutions. Dialog opacity is the opacity applied to the entire dialog image. Sound to play is a sound that will start playing when the dialog starts, intended for voice acting. You normally don't set this value here. Instead, it is set via the Events Manager behavior, as part of the script for cutscenes. The only reason you would configure this attribute here is if you want to quickly test it without a script. Sound channel is the channel used to play both the voice acting sound and the sound per drawn character. If you want to play the sounds at the next available channel, set this to a dash. For voice acting sounds, you need to give it a value if you want to be able to interrupt that sound. Layer ID is the layer used to draw the dialog image, and it's only used in the actor draw mode. On scene mode, it is drawn on top of everything, ignoring this attribute. Dialog font is the font used to draw your dialog. Text to display is the text of the dialog itself. This is also set in the Events Manager behavior, as part of a script. If you configure a value here, a dialog for the actor will start as soon as it is created. You can include special commands to the text, and I'll go over them shortly. Text X and Y positions are the starting position of the text on the dialog image canvas. you can set the X position to center to centralize the text. Character name is a text to be displayed showing the name of the character that is currently speaking. It uses its own font, set in the name font attribute, and its position on the dialog canvas is defined in the name X and Y positions attribute. Max length is the maximum number of characters in each line of text. Line space is the distance in pixels from the top of each line of text to the next. Generally, you should set it to at least the height of your font for readable text. Maximum amount of lines is the number of lines you can display before you need to proceed to a new dialog window. You can bypass that and draw the entire dialog in a single window, pushing away the previous lines of text as new ones are drawn, by checking the Single Window attribute. Delays between characters are the number of visual frames it takes to draw the next character on the dialog text. You set a value for both regular speed and one when the accelerated dialog key is held down, separated by a comma. If you set any of the values to instant, the text will draw in its entirety in one single frame. By checking the Create Next Dialog indicator, you can create an actor to be shown on screen when the dialog continues in a new window, or when it is finished. You select the actor type in the Next Dialog Indicator attribute, and set animations for continue and finish dialogues in the Indicator Animation attribute, separated by a comma. Its position on the dialog canvas is defined in the Indicator X and Y positions attribute. Sound per character is the sound to play when each character is drawn. It doesn't play for spaces in the text. You can also randomly pick from a list of sounds by configuring the name of all the sounds you want, separated by commas, in the List of Sounds attribute. You can also set to not play any sound when the dialog is accelerated by checking the No Sound When Accelerated attribute. You can select a few options for the appearance of your background. Actor creates an actor type to act as the background without resizing it, and set its animation to the dialog box image attribute. Actor resize requires the resize menu window behavior, and resizes the actor to the dimensions configured in the box dimension attribute. Actor variable also requires the resize menu window behavior, but it dynamically resizes the dialog box based on the size of the dialog text. The image options work the same as actor, but use an external image that is stored in the extras folder in your game. The image's name is configured in the dialog box image attribute. Box fixed draws a box of a solid color for the background, requiring no images or actors, and box variable resizes that box based on the size of the dialog text. The color of that box is configured in the background color attribute. You don't set the position of the background on the canvas. It's automatically placed at the position of the dialog text, but it's adjusted based on the background margin attribute. A margin of 10 on the top side means the background will start 10 pixels above the dialog text. You fill the margins in the order top, bottom, left, and right, separated by spaces. If you want the portrait to draw inside the background, give it a margin big enough to fit that portrait. Lastly, you can add a portrait to the dialog image by checking the Use Portrait boolean. You select the actor type to represent your portrait, and define its position on the dialog image in the Portrait X and Y positions attribute. The portrait actor will play the speaking animation when the text is drawing, and the idle animation when the dialog stops drawing. If you want to have your actor use different dialog layouts, you have to configure presets. In each preset, you can set all the attributes described previously to other values, and call those values whenever you want, quickly changing how the dialog looks. To create a preset, you first give the key a name used to call that preset. For its values, you set the name of one of the attributes you want to change, a slash, and its new value. Add a vertical bar, and repeat for more attribute changes. A couple of notes. For actor types, fonts, and sounds, you set a value to the name of that resource. For sound specifically, if you set it to no sound will play. For booleans, you can set it to true or false. For colors, you set it to the red, green, and blue values, separated by spaces. At the bottom of the behavior, you can see the full list of all the attributes you can change this way. As a rule of thumb, if you change an attribute in one preset, you have to change it for all presets you make. This prevents issues like an unwanted attribute change being kept between preset changes. For example, one preset doesn't have a portrait, by changing the usePortrait attribute to false. But the other does use a portrait. If we switch between these presets as is, no portrait would ever appear. Nothing is setting usePortrait back to true. This will guarantee that we are using the correct values for each preset, regardless of any preset changes that may occur. In the name, indicator, and portrait positions, you can add an optional parameter called simply dialog. By doing that, it will turn the positions configured in these attributes into offsets from the dialog text position. On indicator specifically, it will be an offset from the last character of the last line of text. This is useful for centralized text and variable background boxes. Now, let's take a look at the Dialog Commands. These commands are added before the word you want them to start taking effect, without a space separating them. This information can be found in both this attribute's description and the behaviors list documentation files. Interrupt. This forces the text to require a new input or trigger to continue, all within the same dialog window. Break line. Forces a line break. Next box. This forces the text to require a new input to continue, and it will do so in a new dialog window. Change delay between characters. This changes the speed with which the characters are drawn, both normally and when the text is accelerated. You set the normal and accelerated speeds, separated by a comma. For instant drawing, set either of them to instant. Portrait animation. This changes the animation of the portrait, both idle and speaking, in the middle of the dialogue. Change font. Changes the font mid-dialogue. Useful if you want to highlight something. Tremble. Makes the letters start trembling randomly. Display value. This command is replaced with a global value or scene attribute on the dialog text. Value name refers to either the internal name of the attribute or the name of the global value. Category refers to either the behavior name or value between square brackets. When typing the behavior's name, replace any spaces with underscores. You can retrieve from lists or maps as well. Format timer. Formats a number to be displayed as a timer, with minutes, seconds, and decimals. You can add a text to separate the minutes from the seconds, and another for the seconds from the decimals. It should only be used after a display value command. When setting multiple commands for the same word, you must obey the order presented here. Let's take a look at the included NPC simple dialog script. The included documentation file already explains in detail how this script works, so I'll go over it briefly. The Events Manager behavior is set to Control Trigger mode, which means the player must press a key when colliding with this actor in order to activate the script. Event indexes 0 to 5 are used to stop the player, remove control from the player control behavior, disable any behaviors you might need, and remove HUD drawings, which applies for the money and experience behaviors. Event indexes 6 to 9 stop the interact display, stop the flow of in-game time, and make this actor face the player. Event index 10 contains the dialogue. Event indexes 11 to 17 undo all the changes made previously. Event index 18 resets to index 0 and stops the script, allowing it to be triggered again. Now let's go over the dialog event and its parameters. The first parameter refers to when you can advance to the next event. Key input means the dialog must be dismissed by the player. You can set it to complete, which means once the dialog finishes drawing, the next event will play after the wait time, without player input. And if you set it to proceed, as soon as the dialog starts, the wait time will start counting and the next event will play. The next parameter is the sound file to play along this dialog, intended as voice acting. Set it to no sound between square brackets to not play a sound. The next parameter determines the wait time to use. Wait between square brackets will use the wait time set here. If you set it instead to length between square brackets, it will use the length of the sound file from the previous parameter as the wait time. Next is the skip option. By using the Events Manager behavior, you can customize a key to skip dialog events. Set this parameter to skip between square brackets to enable skipping, and no skip or otherwise. You can set the skip dialog control here. Next is the preset. You set here the key you configured in the dialog preset attribute. Set this to a dash to not change presets. And finally, the text of the dialog. You can use all of the special dialog commands here. If you want to display a different dialog based on a condition in your game, add a dialog event with the same event index as the first dialog, but placed above it, and give it a condition. I'll check for a global value in this example. Now, if the greeting global value becomes 1 at any point, this new dialog will play. We can set that global value anywhere in the game, but let's set that as part of this script, before the last event. Since we added an event in the middle of the script, we must update the index of the events below it. It's only one event, so no issues doing it here, but remember that editing a text file is the recommended way of creating and editing scripts. Now, the dialog for this actor will change after you talk with it for the second time. And since we are changing a global value, this will persist even if you change scenes. If we wanted to use a local value instead of global, we'd have to also set the target actor to this actor in the script, before setting the value. Here's how it looks. When using a local value, if you change scenes, the value will reset, so the script will play the first dialog again. The last script I want to show is a back and forth dialog between two actors. One of the ways you can do that is by having the entire script in one single actor, and just change the target actor before each dialog. Here I'm changing between a created actor that is stored in a key and the player actor. If the Events Manager's trigger mode is set to control, you already have the value of the player actor when the script starts. In other cases, you might need to retrieve the player actor first, which can be done with the getPlayerActor event. That's it for today. Hopefully this gave you enough information on how to customize your dialog layouts and how to use dialog in your events, as well as showcasing what can be done with this dialog and cutscene systems. In the next video, I'll cover the display options actor behavior and how you can use it to create branching dialogues and scripts. Thank you for watching.